SOLIDWORKS lets us leverage our 2D assets, our graphics files, and we can insert them into our SOLIDWORKS models. This is super helpful when we want to do reverse engineering or adjacent engineering, when we have to collaborate with other folks, product development, or inspection and compliance. We're talking about image files like bitmaps, JPEGs, PNGs, etc. And they may be digital photographs or graphical information or even an artist's rendering. Let's begin by looking at a Windows folder that contains some graphics files. These are the kind of files that we might want to use for a sketch picture: JPEGs, GIFs, PNGs. Notice in addition to the photographs, we can use artist renderings or graphic art for a sketch picture. For sketch pictures, it's best to use a high-resolution, high-contrast image because it gives us crisp lines and edges that are easy to trace. I use the photographs of the tape dispenser to help guide my design in this reverse engineering example. In SOLIDWORKS, we'll use a little cooking show logic and take a look at the completed model of the tape dispenser part. You can see there's something going on here with what looks like the front and right plane, but those are not the front and right planes. Those are sketch pictures that have been placed upon the front and right plane. Here's a little better view. So you notice we have a photograph on the front plane that represents the front view, and then on the right view we have a photograph that represents that end view, and we're going to use that geometry. We use that geometry to help guide our design. I want to show you the workflow with sketch pictures. So let's roll back to the beginning. And here you see that we have a sketch with a sketch picture in it. We can edit that sketch picture by simply double-clicking on it, and here in the left pane, you see the size and location of that sketch picture, as well as a transparency setting that allows us to understand or see the solid model geometry. And you notice also that I've located that sketch picture with a hard vertex right on the origin to make my life a little bit easier when I start sketching and reverse engineering it. So now you see that we put another sketch picture on the end view, again at a similar relevant location, and we're ready to start creating our feature. And there's our first feature. But let's take a look at that sketch to really get an essence, to get an idea of what we did here. So again, starting out by sketching a horizontal line from the origin, it gave me a place to hang my hat and to start sketching around the profile as needed. Also, I had the tape dispenser in my hand, and I was able to measure some of the things as well. So this really augmented the reverse engineering workflow. The hardest part about reverse engineering and creating this sketch was figuring out that we have hyperbolas in the curved section here, and SOLIDWORKS Sketcher allowed us to do that again with no problem. Let's get out of that sketch and the cut that occurred. So let's take a look at this view. There's our first boss operation. And we use the end sketch, the end image, to define the profile for this cut operation. Let's take a look at that. And here in our sketcher, let's hide those sketch pictures. You can see that we leveraged the edge of the first boss as well as that sketch picture of the end to give us the proper geometry for that trapezoidal shape. And then we simply used that trapezoid to do an extrude operation and cut away the material that we didn't need. Again, I used some hand calculations and measurements to give us a feature at the bottom, and then I could measure the cutout at the top. But this next feature where the axle of the spool goes was also created by leveraging that sketch picture. It showed me where the location of it approximately was, and I was able to kind of reverse engineer that. We finished up the design by throwing some fillets on there, and now we have a pretty reasonable copy of the tape dispenser that's sitting on my desk right now. So let's take a look at how sketch pictures are inserted into the sketch. Let's do a ground level look at that. So I'm going to start with a brand new part file. I'm going to start a sketch on the front plane. To insert a sketch picture, you have to be in a sketch. And the command we're looking for is off the Tools pull-down menu. We'll go to Tools, Sketch Tools, and way at the bottom is the sketch picture. A file open dialog opens up. We can see the various file types that we can use in SOLIDWORKS, JPEGs, TIFFs, etc. And for this example, I'm just going to try to pull in the top view of my teapot. It is a high resolution image, but I'm going to pick the option here to use it as low resolution just in the interest of time because I don't want it to take too long to load up here. You see it came in rather large, and if we look in the left pane, we can see this image is 60 inches by 80 inches. I want to get it at scale because maybe I'm going to do a 3D print or something like that. So we have this really nifty tool called the Scale tool that helps us scale our image based off of one dimension that we know about. What I mean to say is the circular rim there is 3 inches in diameter. So this Scale tool allows me to grab one end and set it at the 9 o'clock position on the rim. And then I can grab the other end and drag it to the 3 o'clock position. And looky there, we get a modified dialog box where I can say that that distance is precisely 3 inches, and it scales the picture based off of that. I'm going to move it to the location that I want it and zoom back in here. And at this point, I might start using my sketch tools, lines, arc, circle, and just start tracing around. But here's a bonus for you. If you turn on auto trace in your add-ins, your sketch picture dialog becomes a wizard. And here you have a next button, and we can have SOLIDWORKS find the margins for us and create the sketch geometry as best it can. We can select portions of the graphics with a lasso or polygon, but what I like to do is say, you know what? Refer to the color at the location that I'm picking right now, and that's going to be the reference color to find the margins and to begin our trace operation. Now you see here in the blue preview what SOLIDWORKS is proposing. Let's modify some of these settings here to get a nice preview of the kind of geometry that we may be interested in. I think that looks great. I'm going to hit apply. The software does its thing, generates that sketch geometry for us, and you'll notice in here I can suppress the sketch picture, and we now get the geometry based off the silhouette and what auto trace found as the margins. Of course, I'm going to have to do some cleanup here, but now I have a really good idea of the proportions, the size, the shape of this, and there we go.